This time I'd like to call to order a public hearing meeting on the 22-23 budget and 22 tax rates. And are we ready to hear that now? Or? Okay. And we'll go ahead and go into the public hearing.
Good evening, Board. I feel like I'm right on top of you tonight. So this is the board meeting and the public hearing where we do all the fun things to set our budget and tax rate and everything for next year. At least that's the what we do here in my department. So if we go forward a little, of course we're always going to try to keep the district goals in mind as we're doing the budget and looking at the different things that we're going to do throughout the year. Our timeline for this, of course, we started back in April when we got our preliminary property values. We've had several meetings. We've talked about it at different board meetings. And actually tonight is the public hearing, as I mentioned, to adopt the budget and set the tax rate. Some of the factors influencing the budget are student enrollment attendance. Most of our state funding is based on that. Our property values, of course, they increased this year. We'll talk about that a little bit. Recruitment and retention of teachers and staff, that's a big priority. And available federal funding, if we have those funds. In the last couple of years, we've had some ESSER funds that have made a difference in that process. Of course, inflation. We all know everything's costing more these days, and so that's always an issue. And then, of course, COVID-19 has kind of died down, but I'm not going to say it's gone away. I don't want to jinx us. So this is our budget, just in overview, the way we've set it right now. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about historical overview of our budget and fund balance. As you can see there, what we're looking at adopting a general budget that would be about negative $4.5 million. If you look at historically what we've done in the past, we have adopted negative budgets. I can go back about I think in 2017 to the end of last year. We had adopted a negative budget in each of those years. I can pull the numbers out, but and even though we had adopted a negative budget by the end of the year because of using conservative estimates and things on attendance and able to find efficiencies in different things through our process in our expenditures, we've been able to significantly improve that and actually have added about roughly $10 million to fund balance. So we've gone from about $30 million in unassigned fund balance in 2017 to a little over $40 million as of the last year end. And so that gives us some confidence that we can go forward with this and work this out. It does concern me to pass a negative budget. Some of the things that we do have, as I said, our unassigned fund balance was about $40 million at August 31 of 2021. Policy states that we should maintain between 60 and 90 days of operating expenditures. That total that we had at the end of 21 actually equaled 94 days of expenditures. So we were actually a little bit over our maximum at that point, is about 1.7 million. The other things that we have that going forward with the ESSER funds, we do have the availability as those mature or as those grants end, we are able to recoup some of our indirect costs. So over the next 2 years, through October of 24, we will add about $10 million back to fund balance for that. So we do have some things that we have available to us to work on that as we go forward, and so that's why we feel like we can we can maintain that and do that going forward. Some of the things that made up the difference from last year mainly was salary and general rate increases. And if you remember, we raised our starting salary to $50,000 for teachers. All the teachers got at least $1,500 per year increase. Other staff, administrative and professional, received 2% raises, and most everyone else received a 3% raise on their midpoint. And so that was mainly the increase from last year's budget for the most part. There's an increase in premiums for property and casualty insurance, which that's an item on the agenda tonight, which we've had some I wouldn't say struggles, but it's a difficult market, and we'll talk about that later. But there are some increases on that based on our history and just the market overall. And then of course general inflation. We did do some help with that in reducing campus and department budgets by 10% across the board, not as non-personnel. So there wasn't any personnel involved in that, just discretionary expenditures. Some of the recommendations that we'll work on to address the shortfall in the short term will be increased efforts to improve attendance. We're working on that diligently as we speak. Campus and department budget reductions, which we already said will help. Investment earnings, inflation is up, but also interest is up. So we can count on getting a little more in that, and that could be as much as several $100,000 by the time we're said and done with that. Long-term steps, we're going to focus on a marketing campaign to increase our student enrollment. As our demographers report shows, there's a lot of students out there that are in our district that don't go to our district, and so we want to focus on trying to improve that. We will explore some energy conservation opportunities. We think there's some real opportunities to work through that, not necessarily just clamp everything down and have everything be 85 degrees, but just with our timing and some of the things that we can do now that we also have some new energy equipment and things that have been installed through the bond issue that will allow us to regulate things a little better. One of the other things we're going to work on, I don't believe we've ever done, is form a budget committee to seek out efficiencies and reduce expenditures. That group will probably consist of some administrators, but it will be campus personnel, teachers. We'll try to include all departments and bring everyone into the mix to make sure that everyone has a say and to find all of the opportunities that we can. Another thing will be try to look at restructuring some programs perhaps. Could reduce budget impact just by having a program at a different campus or combining different programs at different campuses or spreading out would save transportation costs, things like that we'll try to look at. Another item is Chapter 313, the value limitation agreements. We currently have 2 in place and there's 2 pending at this point. The last one, of course, will be legislation. We're coming up on a legislative session. There's always talk about what the legislators might do, might not do for us. So we will be in their ear as much as we can to try to persuade them that they need to step up and help out with public education. And this is just the slide what makes up our school property tax rate. And of course, our maintenance and operations rate this year is defined by TEA will be 0.8646 or 86 cents per $100 of value. The INS rate, which is separate, both of those are completely separate pools of money, if you want to speak like that. The INS debt rate is going to be 0.275 for a total tax rate of 1.1396. And this slide just shows the history of our tax rate. It has gone from $1.35 total in 2016-17 down to this year at 1.1396. So roughly 21 cents our tax rate has dropped per $100 of value since 16-17. And most of that is, of course, the debt rate we maintain steady, but most of that is on the M&O side, and as of 2019, when House Bill 3 came in, they changed the way that that's calculated, and TEA calculates that for us and gives every district their rate. Then the debt service rate, of course, at 275, that will produce roughly 31 million in debt. Principal and interest due is a little over 27 million, and then we're looking at a estimated call of future debt, which we'll talk about as another item tonight. And this is a summary of last year's rate versus this year's rate. So our total rate last year was 1.2268, and our rate for the current year will be 1.1396. So roughly just almost a 9-cent decrease per $100 of valuation. And that is all of the items on that agenda. Or if there's questions, I'll entertain those. And we will have that as a course to adopt and do all that later on in the meeting, but at this point.
Kevin, I know this is the time for the public to ask questions, but I do want to make sure that everybody understands something that I guess if you were watching this kind of presentation for the very first time, you might be wondering, well, how is that going to help our budget if you get more kids coming to school? And you may have made that clear, but you might explain briefly how difficult it is for us to even know what we're going to get in terms of money from the state because of how it's tied into attendance. Again, you may have already covered that, but just I think that's maybe worth making clear to everyone how that works.
Sure, and I like to absolutely discuss that. I mean, that's what I do for a living. So, and what most people think. I mean, this is all based on a lot of estimates. So we're estimating at the beginning of the year what our property values are going to be, and then what our collection rate for taxes will be, and all that. On the state side, where attendance and those things are affected, we're estimating what our average daily attendance, of course, enrollment, and then the daily attendance is going to be at this point. And we know what people have signed up, but I know one of the girls that works in finance, just her friend or her daughter's friend just moved to San Antonio this week. So they were registered in our school, but they're now gone. And that happens all throughout the year. And so you're estimating what number you think that's going to be, and then you take that and plug it into the formula that the state provides, and that spits out a number. And so that's the best estimate we can do. Now, generally we're pretty conservative on that because it's much easier to come back to y'all and say, we increased our attendance, and so there's another $1 million in the coffers for us to make up that difference and those kind of things, as opposed to coming back and saying, well, our daily attendance is down 100, and so we're going to be another $1 million short. So, we try to be conservative with those estimates, but it is just that, it's an estimate. Does that answer?
Yeah. Not everybody knows that. There's been a push, actually, I think, to try to base what we get on, what school districts get on enrollment as opposed to ADA, but I don't know if that's going to go anywhere, but that's, I think, one of the proposals out there.
Right, yeah, and they talk about that. The argument against that, of course, is, well, if we pay the district on just enrollment, I mean, if they get the kids signed up, then they're not necessarily as motivated to get them into school, right? Mm-hmm. So, sure. That's the argument. They want to make sure that we have motivation to actually bring them to school if we can get them there and work on that instead of just getting them signed up. But that's discussed every year, as a lot of things are in the legislature, and some pass and some don't. But it's always we use the best estimates we have at the time and go forward.
I used to tell students, I dealt with truancy a lot, and I think a motivator for kids that really understood is, every time you're absent, you cost your parents money. I mean, it's taxpayer money that's coming away from the school just because you're absent, because the absences or the attendance is what we're paid for. that's how we get the money to educate give you the books, give you the desks, give you the teachers. And when you're not here, we don't get the money. And I don't think, young students, they don't realize that not coming to school has that much to do with their parents' taxpayer money going out the window. And it sounds rude to say, we need you here because we get money for you. But they can't learn if they're not in school. Can't learn if they're not in class. And that's what the state does, is tie our money that we get for the students to us keeping the students in class. So we try to be creative and try to do everything we can and go find them and bring them back and beg parents to just do everything they can to get the students here. I mean, because they can't learn if they're not in class.
Right. Yes, everything you said, Ms. Waller, and yes, I mean, of course, where we staff up, we, put desks, we do all that for the students that we think are going to come, and based on the enrollment. And then if like you said, if they're not there, we've extended those funds to do that. And so then, we're not getting that same money from the state because they're not. So, we need that to be able to provide the kind of education that we want for all of our kids. So it is important, that's for sure. But we don't want to just be saying, well, we need you because we need the money. But it is true, so we can educate as we want to.
That is an impact, but kids need to be in school so they can learn. I mean, that's the bottom line.
True.
Priority is every day that they miss. And I'll caveat that also with there's a different class of habitual students that are constantly gone, and students that are gone for a family vacation or something like that. We understand that. We get that. But it's those habitual students that we need to really need to have in school for the learning. And they need to be there. I want to open. This is a public hearing, so anybody may ask questions, or else we will keep going.
I have a question.
Okay.
I know, and everybody looks terrified. Can we go back to the slide with the M&O and I, the equation? This one.
Okay.
So one of the questions I get quite a bit is, why do we continue to lower the tax rate and not increase teacher salary? And I know it's complicated because I sat in on one of those finance things, and there are so many rules and laws and things that decide how we can spend which money. So I was wondering if you could speak to that, why we would want to continue to decrease our tax rate and not leave it the same, and not leave it the same and raise salaries, and why we can't do that by law.
Right, that's a good question. And so prior to 2019 with House Bill 3, we did have a little bit different system. But under the current system, once they put that into place, how that's calculated is every district gets their certified values on or before July 25th. We submit that to TEA. They put it in their system, and through that calculation, it comes out and it gives the district their tax rate. And then they, of course, through that they offset with state funding, but we're still locked in as to what we can do, the maximum that we can do. On the notice that we post, there's a maximum rate that the district is allowed to charge or to set their tax rate at without calling a tax ratification election or a TRE. So we really don't have the ability to just set it or leave it where we want it and pay more or do what we would feel would be best with that money. It's dictated by the state and TEA as to where we set our rate, the maximum we can do. There is the option to go out for a TRE and ask the taxpayers to increase that, but we've not approach that in a few years anyway. We have done that in the past, but that always is an option if the board wanted to entertain that at some point. So, but right now it is locked in by the state. They set our rate for the maximum we can do on the maintenance and operations rate. Yes, and the other part, the INS rate or the debt service rate, that's completely separate. We can't cross the two over. So, people would say, well, just raise your debt rate and then, use that money to pay raises. But we can't do that. They're completely separate pools, and their distinction as to what they can each be used for is very well defined.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I only have one other comment, and that's back when we were talking about the long-term steps to address shortfall, and you mentioned the budget committees to seek out efficiencies and to reduce expenditures. And I just have one request, that when those are formed, that we funnel back those recommendations, obviously back up through the superintendent, but also back through the curriculum committees and the finance committee, whichever committee is most applicable.
Okay.
Because as we know, sometimes it's hard to see the big picture, and where certain expenditures that may look like they're not that big of a deal at one point may be a much bigger deal at a different level. And so I want to just make sure that that we're leveraging both, and that doesn't mean to come back through both curriculum, but where it's relevant, go through the curriculum committee, and where it's relevant, take it through the finance committee. So.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. We'll have members of each of those probably on those committees, and absolutely we'll make sure.
That's great to have members
Sure,
on the committee, but I want to make sure that because just having
Yes,
a member there they might not see the big picture like the committee does.
Yes, sir.
So I just want to make sure we're leveraging.
We'll definitely discuss with the board before we make any kind of changes on that.
Okay.
Sir.
Okay. All right. If there's no further comments from the board or from the public, then we will go ahead and adjourn the public hearing,
Thank you.
and we will move down into the regular board meeting. So I call this meeting of the Bryan Independent School District to order. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present, and that this meeting has been duly called, and that notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meeting Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. I wish to extend a warm welcome to everyone present. Citizens may make comments about topics relevant to district business. Topics should be limited to 3 minutes. Comments concerning specific students or personnel will be heard in closed session. I should please turn off the sound of all your electronic devices, and please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Honor the Texas flag. Pledge allegiance to Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. And at this time, we have citizens' comments, and I believe Dr. Drury, you're up. I'd like to welcome Donna Drury to the podium.
Good afternoon to the board, Superintendent Carabine, everyone. I just wanted to give kudos and congratulations to the superintendents and some of the board members for being present at the back-to-school community giveaways during the past few weeks. Namely, we've had the Junior League Supply Drive. We've had events at New Zion Missionary Baptist Church. We've had an event yesterday at Fannin Elementary, where we saw Felicia Benford, Superintendent Carabine, Mr. Merrill back there. And, you know, I know a lot of times we come in and there's this issue or that issue, but I did want to take the time to say thank you. The community appreciates you coming out and seeing you, supporting, and not just standing, but working, lifting backpacks, moving tables, you name it, it was done. And it was done with the spirit of excellence and a spirit of enjoyment, if you will. So I just wanted to take the time out to say thank you. We appreciate it. The community appreciate it. And then finally, regarding the market campaign to increase student enrollment, I plan to be in the schools because we have personally 5 students who have moved from charter schools that have enrolled in BISD at 4 different schools. So I'm excited about that. They're excited. The teachers that I've spoken to have been excited about starting. So we're looking forward to an awesome year. And I will tell you that together we are all better. So thank y'all so much for doing that. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, we will turn to awards and achievements, recognition of Bryan High School faculty and staff.
I'd like just to take a minute to kind of describe the day of March 9th, 2022, which will not soon be forgotten at Bryan High, and certainly one of our special students and 5 of our staff members. A little before 11:30, Raylan finished her PT with her ROTC class. She went into the restroom to change, where she collapsed. In the restroom, there was also a Cosmo student, ROTC students, and they quickly went and got their teachers to let them know what was going on. Miss Williams, our cosmetology teacher, responded. She recognized the seriousness of the situation, and she had a teacher that was in the hallway call 911. Miss Williams saw Miss Schuler and asked her to go get the nurse. When Nurse Miller arrived in the restroom, Raylan was unresponsive, didn't have a pulse. Nurse Miller began CPR and instructed the teachers to grab the AED. This is the amazing part. Miss Schuler quickly retrieved the AED, and she and Miss Williams connected it to Raylan. Yes, they knew where the AED was, and they knew how to use it. Nurse Alvarado arrived and began providing rescue breathing. Our SRO, Mr. Dunford, arrived and he alternated chest compressions with Nurse Miller. CPR was provided for almost 9 minutes. The AED deployed an electrical shock twice. Raylan regained a pulse shortly before the EMS arrived. She was transported and stabilized at a local ER. She was then life-flighted to a higher level of care. Thankfully, she made a full recovery and she returned to campus on April 4th. I would like to summarize this with a quote from Nurse Miller. There were other staff that helped that weren't named. Everyone involved that day was an integral part of this successful outcome, and because of their actions and responses, Raylan is alive today. So many things stand out in my, Nurse Miller's, memories of that day, but especially how Mrs. Williams and Miss Schuler bravely stayed in the restroom and supported the nurses and SRO throughout the whole resuscitation process. At one point, I, Nurse Miller, looked up and asked if they were okay and told them they could leave if it was too much, but they both wanted to stay and help. Miss Williams made notes and relayed information to people in the hallway for us as things were called out. At one point, Miss Schuler was even fanning the nurses and SROs with a folder as they continued to give CPR. Miss Schuler also gave a hair tie to Nurse Miller to pull her hair back. This was a first resuscitation that Nurse Miller assisted with outside of a hospital setting. She couldn't have asked or done it without such excellent help. We all hope to never use our training for a situation like this, but it's important to know that when you do, and it happens because it can save lives like it did that day. And we do have our 5 staff members and our student with us. If Raylan will stand, I know she's not comfortable coming up here. Miss Williams and Miss Schuler, if y'all will. Nurse Miller and Nurse Alvarado. our SRO, Billy Dunford.
Mark, can we have them come down for a picture
Yes,
with us?
yes. Yeah, we want to come up and
Yes, ma'am?
get a picture.
What, so sweet.
If you don't mind, if you'll make your way to the front, we'll take a photo.
Okay, let me get one more of my eye. Yeah, all camera size. Thank you very much. I didn't recognize that. I know that guy.
I have to say something while everybody's getting back. I have a dear, close family member that works in the ER. And a couple of months ago, she said, "Tell me what y'all done for the teachers and the staff that saved that girl's life." And I said, well, and it was already summertime, and Ms. Dearvine had already talked about doing something to just thank you so much and let you know how much we appreciate it. And she said, at the ER that day, everyone was talking about how proud they were of the staff at Bryan High School because they knew CPR, they had working AEDs, and that they knew where they were and they knew how to use them. And she looked at me and she said, those people saved that young lady's life. Absolutely. And that was all over St. Joseph. And I just thank you so, so much. And personally, I have to say that at my first opportunity this summer, I got recertified in CPR and specifically got trained in automated external defibrillator. I retired before that, and I have never been trained in that. So thank you so much. We just thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next we'll move into back to school update.
I feel like I'm close.
You're
Really
very
work
close.
hard to see you. I'm going to back up
Would you
just a
like to
little
just
bit.
sit up here with us?
I feel unusually close to you. All right. You can see we brought the entire team down because the back to school update is a team effort. And so there's quite a few of us, and we're all going to take a little bit of time to update you on all of the good things that have been happening in preparation for that first day of school. So we'll start with professional development. When we talk about our professional development, it really began, help me, Clay, thank you. It really began in July, and actually all summer long, if I'm being quite honest. It began in June, and it covered all the way through until that first day back on contract for our teachers who were hired on the District of Innovation contracting. That was our DOI teachers. Those come back on July 28th, and we had a full day here with them. And then we progressed to New Teacher Institute, and many of you were able to join us for the breakfast at New Teacher Institute on August 1st and 2nd. This time was spent acclimating our new teachers to district curriculum, getting to meet their mentors, going to their campuses, and all sorts of other activities, including E8 activities. And then finally, all staff returned to be on site on August the 5th. Since then, there's been a multitude of events and activities that have helped them prepare for the first day of school tomorrow, including team building activities, working with their foundations teams. If you were at Convocation, you heard Mr. Edwards speak. He's a part of our foundations program and he's our lead trainer. And so those campus-based teams worked with the campuses. You'll also hear that we did a lot of writing specific professional development this year across all campuses. More to come on that in the next presentation regarding state accountability, but writing will be a very important area of focus for this year and for years to come. But I think what's most impactful is the time the teachers got to spend together working on individual student data and how to design those lessons specific to student needs for the first day of school in anticipation of what their class needs from them to continue to grow. So really concerted effort from the team behind me and the team on the campuses to make sure that professional learning was valuable time and time well spent to prepare for students.
I'm sorry, before we leave that slide, can we go back one?
Certainly.
What is in their hands?
That would be cocaine.
That's a great question, Mr. McCall. My friends in communications found this one. There were several scavenger hunts. I'm not sure if this is one of the scavenger hunts, but they did have several. They look very happy to have whatever they have claimed there.
We'll go with seashells.
So you have to find out for us.
I will find that out, yes, and certainly.
I bet they were shells.
So to prepare for back to school, for the Meet the Teacher, every campus that we've been at, we've just had unprecedented numbers of families that have returned. I think at every campus that we've gone to. Many of the campuses did neighborhood visits to visit the children, and many of the campuses also had events at their campuses even prior to Meet the Teacher. So we've been out at the campuses numerous times. I think we were all out at every campus today, and they're just super excited to get the kids back in the buildings.
I'll take this one. Just a few short days ago, last week, we launched our Convocation, and it was a wonderful way to reunite our Bryan ISD family after 2 years of cancellation due to COVID. So we really tried to shine a light on our students this day. In particular, we introduced our student ambassadors. They came out in full force as our hype squad and sent a real message to our staff that the students are going to be there for them and will be a reckoning force for campus culture. So it was just a great day. We brought back the infamous roll call, and that certainly set the tone for the day, and it sent a real message to all of us that our teachers, our staff in general, they are excited and they're ready for school to start. So we left feeling great about it, and we know that we're going to have a great year. Also, right on the heels of Saturday night, our Bryan ISD Education Foundation hosted the Hall of Honor event. It was a fabulous event. Again, coming back to face-to-face because of cancellations due to COVID. This night was magical. We shined a light, and you can see in that photo right there, of some of our esteemed graduates from Bryan ISD. And it just really reminded me about how important and how impactful a teacher is in a child's life, because some of these graduates mentioned in their biographies about how influential teachers were in their lives. Almost every single one of them remembered and called these teachers by name. So it just sent a message that it's critically important in the job that we do, and it sent us out that night ready to start school tomorrow.
Yeah, this is a great slide. Dr. Drury did a phenomenal job of thanking everyone. I'd like to thank her and just everyone that put this together. Ms. Benford messaged us a few short months ago and said, hey, we're putting this thing together. We want to do it at Fannin. We could not have picked a better location Linda Taplett literally was on the scene doing phenomenal things. Y'all know she's been in the district, first-year principal, but a veteran of many years. And so she led it incredibly well. And so you see up there the ambassadors, VCOT as well, just some phenomenal students. VCOT, I don't know exactly how many individuals showed up. We got there at 11, and there were people already there. And then Dr. Drury said they're going to be there hours beforehand, and sure enough, we opened at 2, and they were there, honestly, yeah, it was crazy. And their line was around, we were getting waters. It was a phenomenal day. The ambassadors showed up and showed out. I got stories. We sat there about 6:15 afterwards and just enjoyed the moment. It was a genuine moment that we all got to experience, just helping the community, cutting hair, putting in braids, all kinds of things. Shoes went like that. All the shoes were taken. Physicals, we did all the physicals that could be possibly be done. Shots, all types of things. And so the families were just incredible. The kids were amazing, face painting all the way around. And so just a huge shout out, Ms. Binford, for all that you did to organize that. It was incredible. It was so well run. Yeah, it really was. So many families were impacted, and our kids loved it. You know that. They sat there with us afterwards, and they just said we had such a great time. So it was a meaningful day.
So I'm really excited to stand here with this slide in front of you now, and it's showing that we have zero vacancies. And once again, I want to thank you for approving that we go into amend our DOI plan and hire degreed professionals in our community. And so we're still working on filling our SPED vacancies, but we have Jennifer Warren here, and she has a plan that tomorrow we'll have all those classes covered with staff, and we're continuing to work to find those people to fill in those SPED positions. But once again, thank you for that.
It wouldn't be the start of school if we didn't have a new update from TEA.
Of course.
So I got that slide. We have some new COVID guidance from TEA, and honestly what it's reflective of is what we're seeing across the nation. While COVID is still here and still happening, we're pleased that it seems to be a less strenuous strand of COVID, and as such, the Department of Health Safety has reduced the number of days required and recommended for quarantine, and they've done so for students as well. So now when you go to the TEA public health guidance, it says, go look over here, and they're referencing the Texas Department of Health Services. And so with that, we will recommend and require employees to quarantine for 5 days from symptom onset. Same with students, as long as they can return, as long as they are fever-free, conditions have improved, and it's been those 5 days. And so a much more streamlined approach, but what we've recognized is that we've learned some good things as a part of the pandemic, including hand sanitizing stations, deeper cleanings, sanitizing classrooms, all the things that we've learned to help us, we're going to continue to do. But a little bit different on those 5 days now versus the 10 days that we've previously seen in the district.
Back on June 30th, the TEA commissioner put out several items that districts must do before the start of school. Some of the things we had already been doing, some of the things we already had scheduled. One of them was the Safety and Security Committee that we met back in June. That was done before the commissioner put out his directive to do so. One of the things that has that we've had to do this summer was a exterior door audit. And that was going around to every exterior door in the district, inventorying what kind of door it is it operating or functioning the way it's supposed to, and then we've had to keep that in a log, so if they come back later to look at it, we can show that we've done it. I was very happy and very proud when I see the results coming back from that audit. That we had very few, if any, issues that would have prevented our doors from being locked. But we've gone and taken it another step at the campuses where you could have, we call it dogging down the door, where you could have put a stop in front of it. We've removed those stops. We've removed the opportunity where you can open the door and leave it unlocked, and we removed those things from the doors. So we've taken an additional step, even though we weren't required to do so. The campuses have been busy, as Dr. Barrow said, since the 5th, doing training, and part of that training has been updating their emergency operation plans, doing safety and security briefings on their campus to get ready for the new school year. I can tell you, coming from another district, I wasn't sure what I would find or I would see when I came to Bryan ISD, but I was very impressed and very pleased with what I've seen in this district as far as what we have available. Secure entry vestibules, door access systems, security cameras. I know there's several others I wrote down. The Raptor system. I mean, just things like that that a lot of districts may not have, but because of your forward thinking and the voters in our district have voted to give us the funds to do these things, I believe our facilities are secure and ready for the new school year.
And I'm going to add one more to your list, because I always forget it, and somebody always reminds me of it. The Be Safe app. It has made a tremendous difference and continues to make a tremendous difference.
Thank you. And just very briefly, because we do plan to invite some students into the boardroom to give you a more thorough presentation, but we've officially launched the message that Bryan ISD, our students in particular, will be empowered to build a house for a deserving family in Bryan, Texas. We look forward to partnering with Habitat for Humanity, and you'll notice that our Essential 8 logo is embedded on our slide there, and that's because we've been teaching about character development now for several years for every single grade level. So we're going to besides talk the talk on that, we're going to really walk the walk this year. So we look forward to the month of August through December, promoting this, again, getting our kids involved. We want this to be all about our students. Every grade level, pre-K through 12, will have a role with this huge project, and we will promote it, fundraise, solicit donations, et cetera, with the goal to actually build the house in January through April. And if everything goes as planned, we would love to hand the keys over to a deserving family in May with a big dedication ceremony. So this is just a brief overview with lots more to come. And again, this will be all about our students, and we're going to tap those student ambassadors to lead the charge, and they will rally the troops to get more people involved. We actually had a core group of those kids today, and they are ready, willing, and able to build this house. So stay tuned for more excitement.
So back to school has been pretty busy. The summer is not a slow time for any school district, but certainly this team could probably make, I think, any amount of moves. So are there any questions that we could answer for you?
I think to get kids involved in that house, if we promise them that they can put their handprint and their initials in the patio somewhere, because, you know, all kids, that's like, oh, the greatest thing ever. So if we could somehow tell them that they could leave their handprint and their initials somewhere on that house.
I think there are actual plans for that. Some of the beams.
16,000 little handprints, but you know what, we're going to do everything we can to engage every single student. We've got some terrific ideas. We've got our curriculum team looking for opportunities to embed it into our daily instruction, really shining a light on Essential 8, because this is the epitome of character development and serving our community. So we're very excited about it.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next up, we have the state accountability update.
I should have had the team stay up here for this one too, because this is a team approach as well. But this is some fantastic news to share with you, and I know some of you have already heard the great news about this. But before I get into it though, if I could just give you a quick overview of the accountability system. Dr. Morse is also going to be helping me with this presentation as we get into the middle of it, because I need my math friend at the table as we get to some of it. But essentially, we've had this accountability system since around about 2017. That's when the state of Texas revamped the entire accountability system and put this one in place and said they would leave it in place through this year. So newsflash, there's more to come at the end of the presentation about how it's going to change for this year, okay? But this is what we're currently under. And essentially, there are 3 domains, and the first one is all about student achievement, and it's about students and how they performed on the state assessment. It also takes into account college, career, and military readiness, and graduation rates. And so for a school district or for a high school, they have those 3 measures all in Domain 1. In Domain 2, we're looking at academic growth of the individual students. How much did they grow from one year to the next? But that's only in certain grades and certain subjects. There aren't growth measures for every test. Okay? And then the Domain 2B is relative performance. How do you compare to similarly demographically composed schools? And so based on that, you get a rating, which is you could have the same score as the school down the street, but you get a different outcome in terms of your grade based on the demographics of your school. Okay, so you have the same score, but you get different outcomes, different ratings. And then Domain 3 is closing the gaps, and that's kind of the traditional way that we've done it in Texas for a number of years that mirrors the federal accountability, where we look at subgroups and how are subgroups performing, where are our areas of strength, and where do we need to reinforce supports for students. And so that's all Domain 3, and those targets are set by the state, and they're different for each and every group. So all that to say, it's been a long time coming under this accountability system, but Bryan ISD has an 86B. We couldn't be more pleased to bring that to you this evening. We recognize there's still growth to be made. There's still work to be done. But given the pandemic and the opportunity that was lost for so many to learn consistently during that time frame, we couldn't be more pleased and more proud of the students, their parents, their teachers, the community, because it is all of us coming together. Further, we're proud of Texas Public Schools, because there are a number of school districts across the state of Texas right now celebrating similar outcomes, because during a pandemic, Texas Public Schools stayed open and they educated kids. And so this board has been very supportive of our reopening plans and made sure it happened for our community and our kids, and that work matters. So really, really pleased. There are 2 other celebrations on that first slide that we're going to talk a little bit more in depth about. One is college, career, and military readiness, making sure our kids, when they walk that stage, they're ready for that post-secondary opportunity. And I mean opportunities. They have more than one option. They can do multiple pathways and routes. And then also our graduation rate, making sure that our students cross the stage successfully and are prepared for that next step. So if we go back in time under this accountability system, they did not give ratings in 2017. They just designed the system and gave you your numbers, right? They officially began giving ratings in 2018. You can say we've inched up every year until the 2 non-rated years. And then this year we were in 86. Interestingly enough, I know in 2021 we anticipated, had they given ratings, it would have been a favorable result, but this year's even higher. And so we're pleased to see that growth continuing. Building on that, graduation rate, and we went kind of way back on this graph because we think this is a good story. This is a part of Bryan ISD's journey towards post-secondary outcomes and educational excellence. Back in 2014, our graduation rate for a 4-year grad rate was 78.8. That is not something we wanted to stay at or where we wanted to be. And so there's been a very concerted effort by the school district and the Board of Trustees. That has been set as a priority for numerous consecutive years now by the board to turn that around. And I'm pleased to bring you tonight a 91 for the class of 2021, and we're anxiously awaiting the final rates for 2022 as the year progresses. So inch by inch, more each year, and we continue to strive to continue that trend upwards. CCMR follows a similar pattern in that the first year that it was released, it was a new calculation and what indicators are they looking at. And then we started looking at what could we do differently to make sure our students had multiple opportunities for post-secondary outcomes and success. Our CTE program, as you have invested as a board, is second to none. And that goes a long way to the numbers that you're seeing on the screen, because it matters to not just be college ready, but to also be simultaneously career ready. And we want multiple options for our students. We want you to be able to have a high earning wage while you're going to college. If that's your choice and that's your path, we want that for you. And so the team that was up here earlier and then all the campus staff have focused extensively on CCMR for our students. Also pleased to bring to you distinctions for this school year. We have a number of schools that have earned distinctions, and those are where a school is compared to 40 other similar schools that are like them. And then they put them in a rank order for a number of different indicators, including attendance and reading and science and growth and all the different things. And if you're in that top quartile, then you earn the distinction. And so we're pleased that so many of our schools did earn a distinction, but we would like to see that number increase. Yes, ma'am.
What is CTGPSRJ?
So say it again.
Under Johnson, it says reading, math, CTGPSR.
PSR. Mm-hmm. So post-secondary readiness is like CCMR, and closing the gaps is domain 3 from the first one. But that's a great question.
Thank you.
It's tiny little print too, isn't it?
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, so now this accountability system is over. It changes all this year.
Of course it does.
Yes, it does. So it's a similar, there's still going to be letter grades, there's still going to be domains of some sort, but both the assessment and the methodology for all of the calculations will be changing this year. This is the reset year for accountability. So I've asked Dr. Morris to join me to give you a brief preview of what's to come with that.
Okay, we're ready. She leaves me the fun part. I do. Okay. So there are several changes, and we've kind of broken them up into 3 sections. The first is how the test will be administered. So the big change is in 2023, we're 100% online. Now, thanks to a lot of teamwork with the assessment staff at the campuses, technology, the support of the board, Bryan ISD is in a really good place. Last year, we tested over 98% of our students online and had no major problems. It was a huge team effort, but we're ready to go for this. So that's the first big change. The second are the testing windows. TEA has always tested a few tests in early April, and then the bulk of the test was in mid-May. For this testing window, they are creating 2-week windows, and you can see the chart there. So, for example, April 18th through the 28th, this one will do all of our reading language arts testing, including English 1 and 2 at the high schools. And so what you'll see is we may pick certain days to test, but another district may pick completely different days. So there's going to be a lot of leeway within those 2 weeks as to how and when you want to test your students. So we have already started a plan. We're working with campuses to find out what's going to work best for them. And so you can see the same thing for biology, U.S. history, and the science and social studies, and then math. So those will be separate. The good thing for our students is you won't have students that have to take multiple 3, 4 tests in the same week because it's spread out. The next part is due to House Bill.
Interrupt you for a second.
Sure.
Sorry, Julie, Ms. Johnson. I know that part of that extended window where people may take it is partly a technology issue, right? Making sure that everybody's not testing on the same day or within the same window. And I know the answer to this question because I know we have a fabulous network and backup and support, but we're going to be ready during those weeks to have redundancy and everything else in place to support the 100% online testing.
Yes, sir. We've learned a lot over the years moving to online testing. We've been a great team together, planning, determining each campus's needs. And we have the second largest network in the county, and we have a very robust network thanks to E-rate funding. And so, yes, we've been very successful, as Dr. Morris mentioned, and our ratio for student to computer at this point is 1-to-1. And so we even have that as our cushion if we need to, utilize other grade levels devices if needed. So, yes, we are in a great place.
Okay.
Follow up. We're in a good place. What about the state infrastructure, the entity that's offering this exam? When we go to 100% online in 2023, are they ready? Do you know the answer to that?
Well, of course they are, Julie.
Well, I don't know that we can say for sure that we know that they're ready. We have experienced multiple changes over the years with that testing provider. However, they've learned a lot also over the years and gotten better at providing services to us. And so, I don't know, Jill could probably add to that.
There were very few problems last year, and a lot of people started moving to online planning for this year. So there were fewer problems last year with more people online than there were the year before with fewer people testing online. So
There
while,
were still pretty major issues, though, in some pockets, maybe not in Bryan ISD.
not in Bryan, but in
But
some areas.
Across the state.
And I think that has a lot to do with the planning of technology and the strength of our network and the systems we have in place.
Well, and typically we see those issues on day one.
Thank you.
So that's what I'm
So
saying.
we don't
try
test
to
on day
avoid
one.
testing
We
on
try to
day
avoid
one.
that first day.
And that was really at the other second part of my
Yeah.
question, was making sure we were using strategic
Yeah.
logic and
We
reasoning.
have already had
for
that
the schedule.
conversation. Yeah. We don't ever test on the first day of the window.
Good answer.
Good answer.
All right. So the next part of this has to do with the way the test is constructed. And part of this, or all of this on this slide, is related to House Bill 3906 that was passed back in 2019. But the first part, as Dr. Ibarra alluded earlier, is the reading language arts redesign. So gone are the separate 4th and 7th grade writing tests that our students took. And now writing is going to be incorporated into every grade level assessment. So there will be some reading, there'll be editing and revising and editing. They'll actually be writing either short constructed responses or longer constructed responses, depending on the age of the student. So that's going to, we're prepared for that. We had a big focus on writing during PD. So that's something that we have been working towards since we found out about this.
Is that going to delay us getting the results back?
They say not.
They
Well,
say not.
It probably explains why they backed the window up. Yes.
Well, there's been a lot of requests for clarification for this bill. So 3906 has been up for review several times already, and a lot of stuff going to the AG about it. And are we getting those updates pretty regularly from the clarification questions coming from this?
Yes, I think I'm on about every listserv I
Okay.
can be on.
Because there's
to
about
be
8 or
sure.
10 of those listservs
Yeah.
that are out there on those clarifications, and so I'm just watching them like come through, because it's not written,
No.
it was not written by educators
No, it wasn't.
at all.
So when you say they, you know, we always say they. Well, they said, you know, they were all the barbarians. Anybody that lived outside the Roman Empire. And so when we say they, I think of the barbarians. I mean,
Well,
that's-
and that may be accurate, but I'm speaking of other school districts, and administrators have been reaching out to the legislature and the committees for clarification of many parts of this bill, because the bill is a mess. And that's polite. Did you see how I edited that?
I did.
Yes, it's a mess. And so there's been just a lot, and I just wanted to make sure that we're on all of those, because it's going to be.
And the district is also a member of something called Accountability Connect through Lead Forward. And actually, I think next week or the week after, there is a webinar that's talking about providing public comment and different feedback to, for some of these issues. So the other part of House Bill 3906 is that it limited the number of multiple choice questions that could be on the test. So the test cannot have any more than 75% of the questions be multiple choice. So that leads to what TEA is calling technology-enhanced items. Since we're all online, we have some flexibility to ask questions that are not multiple choice. And so, again, the district is in a good place because we knew this was coming a couple of years ago. We've started working those types of questions into the local assessments that students sometimes take online. Because we have Schoology and NWEA MAP, students are already seeing those questions. Teachers can create those technology-enhanced items through those systems. And so, while are we 100% ready? Not yet, but we still have time, and we're making plans. And so, because of the support that the board has given us in allowing us to get Schoology and MAP, I think we're in a very good place. And there will be a concerted effort all year long. As a matter of fact, I went to a campus Friday afternoon and trained 3rd and 4th grade teachers on these new question types and talked about how they could work them into their curriculum. So the planning is already.
Do we have practice, have we seen what this might look like?
TEA has released a series of questions, and you can go to TEA's website and look at their technology enhanced items, and for each subject and grade level, they have 7 to 10, sometimes 12 questions that you can go in and see this is what these different items will look like. But nothing yet where we can say, oh, here, take this technology enhanced test that's exactly like the STAR will be. We don't have those yet.
Yeah, well, I know like with STAR over time, with the released exams, it gave us a better idea of, oh, this is what they mean when they say X, Y, Z. Otherwise, it's pretty, it's tough for teachers and districts to navigate. Well, what are the actual changes on this exam?
And so I know that our curriculum department has already been writing questions like these technology enhanced items, and then we can put them into Eduphoria Aware so students can see those. So we have practice questions they can use, but then they'll be taking some of their tests after they've learned how to navigate the items. So they have lots of practice before we get to the real test. Now, speaking of items, this is just a partial list of some of the types of questions, and I just wanted to highlight a couple of them because to me, this would be a much better way to take a test if I were a student than answering a bunch of multiple choice questions. For example, the hot spot, I was looking at a 5th grade science question, and it had a diagram of a circuit with light bulbs. And the question was, once this circuit is complete, which light bulbs will light up? And you had to select the 4 of the, I think there were 7 light bulbs, you had to select the 4 that were going to light up. They can create or give you a map in social studies and ask you to identify features or identify where something happened. And so there's a lot of different things in math, since I was a math teacher. The fact that you could have a student graph a line on a coordinate plane, you could have them graph on a number line, create bar graphs, model fractions at elementary school, where they actually can go in and tell how many sections should there be and how many should there be shaded to match certain things. So there's a lot more flexibility, and to a certain extent, the way teachers teach in class. I never taught with a multiple choice question, so I think this, in the long run, will be good for our students.
So if I'm reading that right, that list right, a multiple choice is not the same thing as a multiple choice.
Correct. So,
Okay,
yeah, there's.
Yeah, my concern, just thinking about the technology piece, because we don't know what the test looks like, we don't know the platform. I'm thinking about elementary children, like knowing, they may know, but they, like clicking on the right things to demonstrate that they know is a barrier for them to show what they know.
Or drag and drop.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
that's a skill, and if we, different computers work different ways too. I mean, I know on this one, the way the pad works is very different than my laptop that I typically use, so it's backwards sometimes from what I think. So just thinking about that, it scares me to think that we're having this test that's going statewide that has all these pieces that are completely untested. I mean, have they done a pilot of it yet?
I think they have done some, but one of the things we can do is we can go into the Cambium system, which is the test vendor, and we can actually create local tests. And so that's the plan, to put some of our DBAs in that, or our district-based assessments in that system, so that students can practice in the testing environment.
This is the epitome. Remember the old days, we will never teach to the test. We'll never teach the test. Boy, are we teaching to the test. I mean, we're teaching literally to how to answer these specific questions. And so think how much time and effort our teachers are gonna have to put into just answering, like Julie was saying, how to do it.
Just,
As
I mean,
opposed to-
Yeah, and there's technical aspects, but that's gonna be true of any type of answer choice. But I would, and we can demonstrate that, we have the tools, we can do that. Their kids are used to seeing computers, the technology is a lot better than when you used to just hit enter to move the next question and it automatically changed your answer choice to D. Technology has caught up quite a bit there. One of the more, I think, probably critical areas that I'm concerned about is drag and drop, hotspot, highlight text can be, but those two specifically are inevitably not accessible and can't be made accessible just by the very nature of what you're asking the kid to do. So I assume that there's going to be, accessibility variations and making sure that we have those variations also available in the practice testing as well. Because if you, but those, but yeah, it's going to be a different game. We're going to have to definitely use, teachers are going to have to practice.
Well, this is also similar to when we saw the big changes on the TELPAS, the English Language Proficiency exams, right? When this board was at that time when they changed TELPAS, and there was digital grading now of listening and speaking, and a number of our students, some of the questions weren't necessarily culturally responsive to what our students may experience, and so when they responded, it didn't make a lot of sense to them. And so they were scoring advanced high in all the other areas and then very low on either at least listening or speaking. I think we're going to see some areas here where we're going to have to learn, Dr. Harlan, like you were mentioning, this is the first year a third grader is going to experience any of this STAR testing to begin with, and then new assessment items. We have new staff members, and no one's seen a test like this. So this is the accountability reset year.
Well, and it's high stakes.
It is.
Right? It's not like.
It's letter grade high stakes,
So that's the scary part for me.
and there's writing incorporated to every grade level now, which is new and different and often a struggle for students, especially those who are acquiring a second language. It's always
Well,
an
and
area
it's
of
not
growth.
writing, it's going to be typing.
Yes.
Right, so this is not writing, this is thinking, coming up with your
Composing.
story, composing your story, and then
Yes.
knowing how to find all the letters that you need to spell the words to
Yes.
write your story, like that's the
There,
typing.
there are some accommodations for third graders with typing and some assistance that can be provided to them.
Well, I think on these other things, maybe we can get Julie to help us utilize an Xbox controller.
Yes.
And then we might do better, especially with drag and drop. That's good.
Good.
Okay, that's really smart. Yeah, thank you.
And then Barbara, not only our students, but I think we've got students that this is the norm for them. They can drag and drop. We can't, but they probably can. But I'm worried about our teachers, because this is gonna be new to them.
Yes,
The
ma'am.
veteran teachers probably can just lasso up and rally around and get on the horse
Still
and go.
do.
But what are we gonna do extra for our new ones?
So
That
we're-
this is really new to them.
That's actually one of the best things that we can do, is to make sure the teachers are prepared so they can prepare the students, right? So we're very, very grateful that we have an instructional coaching workforce in our core content areas that are able to do just-in-time professional learning with our teachers, job embedded. They do that as their lesson planning. And so as they're creating their lesson plans, they're dropping in these types of question and items into Schoology and into Cambia. I always say it wrong. Into Cambia to make sure they're practicing and teaching the teachers that. Jill's already provided professional development to a number of teachers, but we're going to continue to turn it around. And this actually started last year in helping staff adjust to and acclimate to these new testing questions and items, and also moving all of our district-based assessments to an online environment in anticipation of this year. But it will be job embedded. We also provide curriculum collaboratives after school, where they come together and they learn about the next unit, the next couple of units together as a horizontal team. And these are part of that training, making sure that the teachers are equipped with what are the students going to be expected to do to prove their learning? How can we make sure they're equipped to do so? And so it's all a part of it. When we practice with Telpos, we also practice with the microphones. A big hurdle was during Telpos was the student getting acclimated to using a microphone and speaking out loud into a microphone. That's not something they do on a daily basis. But if they don't do it clearly, the computer grades them differently for their speaking skills. And they could inadvertently get a lower grade just because of their anxiety of talking into a microphone. So the more we can practice with it, with our teachers, and then in turn with our students, the better off they'll be. But it will be new and different.
And what are our plans for, because we can't just expect the teachers to do it all at school. What are our plans for educating the parents on this? Because they're gonna have to do their part as far as helping, because this is gonna be new to even them.
So one of the things I liked about what Dr. Morris said earlier, while these are technology-enhanced items, these are things that we actually can do in the classroom in a number of ways. Then also it's how we teach and how we send things home. One way, in fact, Mrs. Johnson over there has just made sure that the board's investment in interactive displays in every classroom have been installed throughout the district. And so the ability to drag and drop responses and to interact with those things is not just always on a computer, but also on interactive displays. And so when we do open houses and we invite all of our parents into the classrooms, those are things we want them to experience with their child through Schoology, through the interactive TVs in the classroom, and then also, when the computer goes home in the upper grades, working with them at home. In the younger grades is when you come into the school and we work with you there. But certainly the windows are going to be a communication change for parents. We're accustomed to it being certain times of the year, and that's going to be new and different for a number of families. Your STAR test is today. How is it today? I heard on the news for another school district it was a different day. It can be confusing to our families, and unbeknownst to them, they may not know that it's the coming day. So we'll do a lot of upfront communication to make sure that's clear.
I just have a quick comment. I trying to learn how to take these tests, I view that a little differently than the old days of truly teaching to the test, where basically and what it looked like to me was kids just were trying to memorize stuff. Right. And I think that the goal is, and I hope they succeed, I'm not saying they will, is to require critical thinking in order to answer the questions. And I don't want to send any more negative messages about public schools than is already out there, that, oh, well, now we're just, going back to teaching to the test. I think it's going to be more complicated to take the test, but I hope in reality we are now much more than back in the old days, requiring kids to think and analyze. And I don't know how much y'all know about that, and y'all may not even want to comment on it, and I'm not saying they're going to succeed. I'm just saying I know that's been a goal for a long time.
Well, I would say that we always think about test-taking strategies when we go into the SAT, right? ACT, SAT, any college preparatory testing. We always look at, okay, how do we coach the student to navigate the test to make sure they perform their best and understand how it's constructed? This is truly about how is the test constructed so you can show your learning and your understanding. I do believe that it is about, like Dr. Morris mentioned, how do I teach in my classroom so you can show your learning? Same thing, trying to make some of those practices transfer from the classroom to the assessment, so it is a natural extension of what's happening in the classroom. And now with the devices that are pervasive throughout the system, as well as the interactive displays, we can create those learning environments where this is the norm versus the anomaly. I agree completely, Mr. Stasny. It's a structure and a strategy versus the content, because the content must involve critical thinking.
And also remember, there's still going to be probably about 75% of the test that's the old-fashioned multiple choice as they're building their test bank. So So the last thing I have for you, and Dr. Ibarra already mentioned this, but 2022-23 is the accountability reset year. It was actually supposed to be last year, but they put it off a year due to the pandemic. And so TEA is in the process of evaluating all of the methodology for the accountability system and making some recommendations for changes. Some of those recommendations are starting to come out. I've been hearing bits and pieces, but we don't really know anything official yet. We're supposed to get more information in October. So we do know that there will be, the 3 domains are still staying the same. There may be some adjustments in how things are calculated. So the targets and the cut points are all going to be reset based on 21-22 data. But the bottom line, and what I want to leave you with on this, is that after they change this system, we're not going to be able to make an apples-to-apples comparison between this year and next year. We could have the same exact performance and get a drastically different rating. And probably once we know more about the system, my team and I will run some predictions to see how we would have fared in the new system based on last year's performance.
Can you remind us, Jill, how long have we had the system we are under this year?
Its first year was 2017, and so they said about 5 years before they redesigned, and that's kind of what they stuck to. So they'll probably redesign, and we'll have another 5 years before they do something different. TEA.
86 this year.
All right, any other questions?
Thank y'all so much.
Go back to that B slide. Can we go back there?
That was a beautiful slide.
Yes.
That was awesome. How close are we to the one-to-one technology?
We're there.
We're already there. All the way bottom to top.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, awesome. That's amazing. We have made a lot of progress.
Yes, yes, we have.
That's one thing I think that we could, if there is any silver lining for the pandemic, you know, that summer that you guys just worked so hard handing out all those devices and getting.
And waiting for the order to come in.
And getting, it's just, you know, who would have ever imagined? And then boom, here we are, and it worked in our favor so much.
It did.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, next up, we have discussion and action on the consent agenda.
I move approval of all the items on the consent agenda.
Second.
I have a motion by Ms. Dwayne, a second by Ms. Binford. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Motion carries. And next, we'll move into items for discussion and/or action on the regular agenda. Please note, we're going to go in the following order. One, consider approval of the budget for the year ending August 31, 2023. Then we're going to actually skip to 3, discussion and consideration of all matters, incidents related to providing for the redemption of the maturing of the bonds, and then we'll go back to 2. So just
I'm not
have
going
that
to be able to do
online.
that.
So 1, 3, and 2.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Sorry, that's what the attorneys say we have to do, so. Sorry, Mr. Staff.
Well, then
I
that's
mean,
what
no
we'll do.
offense. We want to make sure we do it right, so, thank you.
The they, Ruthie.
Yes, I'm thinking it, but.
It's those attorneys keeping us out of trouble.
That's right. We don't, nobody wants to go to jail. So we're ready for item 1?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
No, thank you. So we've already done the public hearing, talking about the budget. You also have attached there a summary of that budget, listing the debt service fund, which would be a balanced budget, the food service fund, which would also be a balanced budget, and then the general fund with roughly total revenues of just over 158 million, total expenditures of just under 163 million, which would leave us with a deficit budget of 4.56 million. if it's the last page of the attachment that you have, looks at some of the assumptions and some of the increases, the summary of that as we went through. But we estimate some of those things: student enrollment, of course, property tax growth, which was roughly 17% this year. And then we set the M&O tax rate, debt service rate, and we estimate a tax collection rate of 99.5%. Also included the increased premiums in property and casualty insurance, as I mentioned, the salary and general rate increases that we talked about a little bit, general inflation, and then 10% reduction, of course, across the campus and department budgets. And it states there on the last paragraph, the operations tax, maintenance and operations tax rate at 0.8646, which is the maximum rate that we can adopt without calling a tax ratification election, as you asked about, Ms. Fran.
I move approval of the recommended budget for the year ending August 31st, 2023 for the general fund, debt service fund, and food service fund as presented.
Second.
I have a motion by Ms. Dwayne, a second by Dr. Harlan. If there's no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried as moved. And next up, we'll have item number 3, discussion and consideration of all matters incident and related to providing for the redemption of the $3.805 million in principal amount of the outstanding Bryan Independent School District Unlimited Tax School Building and Refunding Bond Series 2013.
There we go. So tonight we'll talk about, this is really tax rate management for our debt service fund. We have normally Mr. Stephen Adams comes from Specialized Public Finance to talk to you all. Tonight we have his partner, Mr. Paul Jason, and he'll go over this presentation, but essentially to manage our debt rate with the purpose of hopefully saving interest and creating capacity for future debt as we go through the process.
Thanks, Kevin. Good evening. Paul Jason with Specialized Public Finance. I've got a hard copy for those that wanted a hard copy. I said on your...
We have them.
Okay, great. Thank you. So this is, like Kevin mentioned, tax rate management. This is normal practice that the district undertakes, years that we don't sell debt, to allow us to maintain a stable tax rate. When the election passed in November, we used some pretty conservative assumptions for our tax base growth. We used 3% for this year, and we came in at 17%. So that's why we're here tonight, to maintain the 27.5% tax rate just for the INS. That was what was used for the bond election assumptions. And so with that tax base growth, we can prepay $3.8 million of debt on the 2013 bonds. Interest rates on those bonds are 4%. By doing this, we can avoid just under $1 million in interest through fiscal 2030. So the tax base is $10.4 billion. That's 17% growth. And then as far as the prepayment is concerned, we expect this to occur on your payment date 2/15 of 23. Page 2 is just, sorry about that. Page 2 is the calculation of avoided interest. So we have a cash outflow of $3.8 million. This is the cash that's generated by the maintaining the 27.5% levy to allow us to pay more debt than we anticipated. And you can see the savings every year is $950,000. Page 3 is the model. I know this board has seen this before, and staff. It's the numbers in the model that was used when we first looked at the November 20 election. We used some very conservative assumptions. We actually ramped those up a little bit for 24 and 25 to 5%. Even if that occurs at those levels, you'll be back here needing to call debt, but we do have a bond issue slated for next year at this time. So we can use that bond issue and accelerate principal, so we can pay off more principal than we initially anticipated. on that proposed issue. So we'll be back next August with the remaining authorization of the November 20 bond issue. Page 4 is just your callable. Oh, that doesn't look good. Maybe I can. Let's see. Okay, well, I'm glad they've got a hard copy. So page 4 just shows all the district's callable debt. The 23 debt is, that's what we're calling now. And then you see we'll issue debt in 23 as well, the remaining authorization of the 2020 issue. And then you've got some callable debt in the out years as well to maintain a stable tax rate if that's the board's discretion. Page 5 is just the timeline. We're here today to have the board consider a resolution authorizing the redemption of the 2013 bonds in the amount stated. The last day that you can adopt the tax rates in September, and then we'll actually send notice to the escrow agent in December, and then actually redeem the bonds, additional bond payment coming February 15th of 23. So that's all I had for the tax rate management and the prepayment of debt. Happy to answer any questions.
Well, you're trying to save us a bunch of money, so it's kind of hard to argue with you. So I think that's kind of a no-brainer. I'm going to go ahead and move to adopt the resolution providing for the redemption of $3,805,000 in principal amount of the outstanding Bryan Independent School District Unlimited Tax School Building and Refunding Bond Series 2013, maturing in 2029 and 2030, and resolving other matters incident and related thereto.
Second.
Have a motion by Mr. Stasny and a second by Ms. Benford. If there's no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries as moved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Kevin, for this.
Okay, and now we will return to item number 2, consider approval of a resolution setting the tax rate for 2022 for the Bryan Independent School District.
Yes, sir. So this then, we've adopted the budget at this point. We've passed the motion to prepay some of the outstanding debt. And so we can go ahead now and set our tax rate appropriately to support those two items. And this would set the M&O tax rate at 0.8646 for the year, and the debt rate at 0.275 for a total tax rate of 1.1396, which as I said is almost 9 cents less than the 21 rate. We do have to, since this, even though it's lower, it still will raise more taxes for maintenance and operations than the last year's rate did. So we do have to have special language on the resolution, which is included on that resolution.
I move approval of the property tax rate for 2022 to be set by the attached resolution at 0.8646 for maintenance and operations and 0.275 for debt service, for a total rate of 1.1396 per $100 evaluation as presented.
Second.
Have a motion by Dr. Harlan, a second by Ms. Waller. There's no further discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
If I may, I'm going to make one more comment. I know this is probably a little bit of a repeat on items 1 and 2, but I'm still concerned because I hear it out there that we're, I don't know, out of control spending or whatever. Here we are adopting a deficit budget. And it was explained very well by Kevin during the public hearing. But just a real quick summary of that is you use very conservative assumptions. There's a lot about our average daily attendance, those kinds of things. Even what our expenses are going to be, whether the utilities are going to go way up or what. So you're doing your job. We have a history here of doing this. We do our best to bring it back in where we're in the black by the end of the year, and it's happened year after year, almost without exception that I can remember that we are able to do that. So if we didn't do what we're doing, we couldn't give raises to teachers and other staff that really deserve raises. So we're doing what we think is the right thing to do, and we're not putting the district in financial jeopardy. And if Kevin, if there's anything I said just now that was wrong, well, please correct.
No, sir, I would say you hit it right on the head. I mean, that's exactly right. We do use conservative estimates when we're adopting the budget and working through those things. And an example this year is inflation. I mean, we built in a pretty healthy number for inflation, and which then creates a larger deficit. Now, will it stay or go down or, possibly increase? I mean, we'll have to see when we get there, and then all the other things that we do estimate. But as I said, we have added to fund balance over the last 5 or 6 years pretty significantly, and we've done that even though we have adopted a deficit budget to start the year. So, people would say, well, why do you do that? Well, I mean, but you just want to make sure that we're not overestimating what we're doing. And if we came in with a balanced budget and then the estimates went the other way, we would have to come back in and say we're going negative. I think that's a worse option. So, but yes, you were exactly right, Mr. Stasny.
Thank you.
Okay. Were there any opposed to the motion? If not, then the motion carries as moved. Thank you. All right. Next up is item 4, discuss and consider approval of a purchase over $50,000 for excess workers' compensation insurance.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to ask Ms. Melissa Martin, our Assistant Director of Finance, to talk about these. She oversees our procurement, keeps us out of trouble with the things that we have to purchase and the many rules and regulations, of course, that we have to follow on that. And she's up to speed on this. And so these next 2 items I will let her present. I'll be available for questions. We also have Mr. Grant Graham and Don Smith from ANCO for these couple of insurance items. If we get into the weeds and we want to drill down into them, we can go there as well. So.
Good evening, Board. Thank you. Well, the first item that I'm bringing is to ask for approval for purchase of excess workers' comp insurance. So as you know, Bryan ISD is currently self-funded. However, we purchase excess workers' comp insurance to help with those large losses. So currently, our policy ends on August the 31st of 22, and we currently have it with Midwest Employers Insurance, which is handled through Frost. So the policy is based solely on our estimated payroll. And so this year we have a 7.3 increase in payroll from the previous year. They are offering a flat rate of 0.0496 per $100 of payroll, which is just a slight increase from last year of 0.0461. We are asking for a renewal of a 2-year term to lock in the rates due to medical cost inflation as well as the overall increase in the premium industry-wide.
Workers' compensation or insurance coverage with Midwest Employers Casualty Company at a rate of 0.0496 per $100 of covered payroll for a term of 2 years as presented.
Second.
I have a motion by Dr. Harlan and a second by Ms. Dwayne. If there's no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries as moved. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that will bring us down to discuss and consider approval of purchase over $50,000 for property, general liability, and automobile insurance.
Yes, sir. We have a slight presentation, a small presentation for this one. So tonight, I bring to you for approval for property, general liability, casualty, and automobile. So some of the factors that influence the premium for all of those include market conditions, inflation, the increased total increased value, which is due to construction as well as increase in the value of property. Also, we have an increased coverage for cyber liability and crisis management. Along with that, some of the increases that we're seeing in property insurance is due to the 3 storms that we had within a very short time. The hailstorm of 2020, the freeze storm of 21, and then another hailstorm in 2021. So to provide you a little background, so the market condition increases, Bryan ISD, the loss run over the last 2 years have made it a very hard market for us to keep rates very comparable. ANCO Insurance has submitted to different carriers requesting those proposals, and then we have a recommendation to renew with our current carrier, which is TPS, to be the best and most advantageous option for Bryan ISD to lock in those rates.
They still wanted us?
They did. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. The next slide I have is a comparison from 21, 22 to 22, 23 in all 4 of the property categories. So commercial property, we're seeing an increase of $350,000. General liability, we're seeing an increase of $5,198. Auto liability, an increase of $3,947. And then auto physical damage, an increase of $1,669. We did budget money for the increase in property and general liability insurance that will cover this increase for the 22-23 school year.
So this is already in our budget?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And that's the end of my presentation. Are there
I
any
know we've
questions?
had a lot of claims.
Yes.
And so, do you know off the top of your head roughly, like, what their payout to us was? I just remember we approved a lot of things that were gonna be reimbursed by
Yeah.
insurance.
Yes, ma'am, and we had the loss runs on that. Over the last couple of years, it's been roughly $10 million. So,
You gotta have it.
yeah, I mean, it's a necessary evil, so to speak, but, yeah, and that creates then the issue of, trying to get someone else to step in and bid it. And, last year we had a sizable increase. We're probably looking, I don't know if we could say exactly, but we're probably looking at another year or 2 if we can have minimal losses. We haven't had really any losses this current year. If we get another year under our belt, then maybe we would have more luck going out and having someone else step in and be interested in looking at it.
Can I ask you, have we ever had, the cyber liability, have we ever had a claim relating to that?
That's because Julie's done such a good job.
Right, but that shall not be put into the universe.
And also, I know that we take what they're expecting and make sure that we're covered for every single thing to do with that. So I would assume that anything we might ever have to pay out of cyber liability, somebody was smarter than us, which doesn't happen with Julie, but, right. And I did think that probably a fair amount of the rising cost was related to that. But also, I will let our taxpayers know, everyone in the district, including students, particularly staff and faculty, and even the board, we're trained every way possible to protect ourselves and the district in cybersecurity, in the things that could be expected. I mean, we just got this big gigantic thing that we have to finish, I don't know, by the end of September, I think.
It's September 1.
Yes.
It is. I have
And,
finished mine.
And so.
I will say,
We don't take, of course, we don't take this lightly.
Oh, no,
but
ma'am.
we do everything we can to train our students, our staff, everyone. I mean, everyone in the district has to be trained.
Oh, yes, ma'am. And that's not all we do. So one of our big partners is Homeland Security, as well as we hired a consulting company out of Waco that helps us track anything that happens on our network. For example, I had to have some settings for my own account changed because tomorrow we're going to Bryan High and we're going to help kids with schedules. And so as soon as Rob made that change on my account, he notified us immediately. We get an email, an urgent, is this a change you meant to happen? So I can't say enough about this consulting company we've put in, but we also are using that Homeland Security firewall. So it also helps prevent that foreign country traffic that comes in. And then Google themselves also do a really good job of trying to prevent that stuff from coming through. So we have many layers we've put into place over the last 2 years, just because it is such a scary thing. Yes, ma'am. And you will have a new training coming up this next year.
Yay! Never ends. I move approval of the Texas Political Subdivision Self-Insurance Fund, TPS, as the property, automobile, and general liability insurance carrier as presented. Second.
I have a motion by Ms. Dwayne and a second by Dr. Harlan.
Oh, Dr. Davis.
Dr. Davis, okay. If there's no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries as moved. Okay, and that will bring us up to item 6, consider approval of a budget amendment for the general fund for the year ended August 31st, 2022.
Yes, sir, thank you. We're bringing forward tonight final budget amendment for the current fiscal year to wrap things up as we finish up the year and close out our financial year. In this amendment, there is some additional revenue from some items. Of course, investment earnings, as I said, increase in some rents, tuitions, other local things. We do have about a $500,000 increase in state funding from a 2020 property tax value audit, which will increase the state funding. And just some other miscellaneous items, insurance reimbursements, of course, from some of that work we're doing yet for some of the hail damage and those storms. We're still cleaning those up. Other things, just realignment to get the budget to realign to match up with expected expenditures. And one item, difference in the payroll accrual, which is just a timing issue. There's more work days in this fiscal year for the calendar next year, and we have to record those in the current year. And every year it's a different number. So this year it's an increased number. So we will it just be a book entry basically to record those in the proper year that the work was completed. The other thing that we have in here is a transfer again this year to group benefits risk pool, and that's required by law as the general fund has to support any self-insured funds we have, such as group health insurance or workers' comp fund. Last year, I believe we transferred some in there too, and we're required to do that. We've had a negative balance in that fund balance, I think for 3 years now. Last year with COVID and things, we felt like we were there and we were not going to be negative at the end of last year. Were able to reimburse a lot of the COVID items with ESSER funds, but it was just more than we had anticipated, so we were still negative at the end of last year.
I move approval of the budget amendment for the general fund for the year ending August 31, 2022, as presented.
Second.
See, when I look down this way,
I know.
nobody else speaks up. I get it from over here.
Felicia got it. She was so
I
fast. She's so
I have a motion by Dr. Harlan and a second by Ms. Binford. If there's no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries as moved. All right, and that will bring us up to item 7. Consider approval of a resolution for the commitment of fund balances for the year ending August 31st, 2022.
Yes, sir, and this is my final item tonight.
Yay, Kevin.
Thank you. Every year, the board is required to set aside or do a resolution to set our commitment of fund balance for the year going forward, and that's to set certain things that the general fund has to be responsible for, to set aside a reserve that can't be spent. So those are committed funds that are not considered unassigned fund balance. In other words, they could not be spent on other things besides this. And of course, the board has the option to change that every year. So that's where we're requesting this year. Of course, we're transferring some from group benefit or from general fund to group benefits risk pool. I am recommending to reduce the amount in maintenance projects from $2 million down to $1 million. We feel that's appropriate, as many of the deferred maintenance items that we had built that in for in the past have been taken care of with bond projects as we've gone forward. So we feel there's less exposure on that, so we're going to reduce that at this point. But this just basically sets our reserve fund balance to this point, so we have that available if those items should happen. I believe we used that a couple of years ago for some technology issue when we had something. So it just sets that aside so that it can't be considered for other things.
Move approval of the attached resolution committing fund balance for the year ending August 31st, 2022, as presented.
Second.
Getting him all jacked up.
I have a motion by Mr. Stasny and a second by Ms. Waller. If there's no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries as moved. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and next up is Human Resources. Discuss and consider approval of the employee stipend list for 22-23 school year.
Good evening. Annually, I come to you and I talk to you about the stipends that we are proposing for employees for their additional work they do above and beyond the school day. And sometimes I ask for modifications of current stipends, but that's not the case tonight. These are all new stipends that I want to talk to you about. So the first section is dealing with academic and professional stipends that we have. As you know, we have a lot of new teachers in the district, and we know that those teachers that we have need a lot of help and support. And we've had mentoring programs in the past, but this year we want to beef up our mentoring program and have on campuses that have 10 or more new teachers a lead mentor. And that person will serve as the coordinator of all the new teachers and the mentors on the campus, but they will also take a part of being a mentor for mentees. And so we're asking that they get a $500 stipend plus a $200 additional amount for their organization, checking services that they'll have for everybody on that campus. And to follow along with that, we've never given our teachers who've served as mentors a stipend, but we're asking that this year we do that, and that would be a $500 stipend. And then another one, as you've seen in pictures, and maybe you've been a part of it, you saw them at Convocation, our student ambassadors. We have those students identified at our 2 middle and 3 of our high schools. And we would like the person that's going to coordinate that group of kids, keep them organized and keep them going and representing us in a positive way, a $1,000 stipend for them. And then in our intermediate and elementary schools, we want to start doing Lego robotics. And we would like for that person, those people, a person on each of those campuses to get a $500 stipend.
Paid to play with Lego.
I know.
That is amazing.
It's brilliant, right?
Okay,
So
how
the-
many will be on each campus?
Which one, Ms.
For
Binford?
The lead, so we're saying it's gonna be 10 on each campus for the lead campus mentor teacher, am I reading that right?
10 plus mentees.
So they have to have 10 or more new teachers to have that lead mentor. Otherwise, it falls back to what we used to do in the campus principal or assistant principal, organize the mentors on the campus.
Do we have any campus that meets that criteria? Do we
Yes,
know
ma'am.
offhand?
We have 8 campuses that meet that criteria.
And so the principals and the APs do it at the other ones?
If they have less than 10 new teachers. Okay. Other questions on this slide? Then I'm going to go to the next one, and it's a fine arts stipend. And we have 3 new stipends, and this is just a reflection of our fine arts program growing and getting stronger and trickling down to other levels, that we're asking that we have an intermediate school theater arts director at $500, a middle school drill team director at $1,500, and then a middle school mariachi director at $3,000.
Now, Carol, the drill team director, so on the middle school level, what will they be doing? Because we always have such a low number in the high
That's
school
growing.
for the drill team because the requirements are just over the top. So will they be getting those students ready to when they reach high school, so our numbers will increase?
I mean, Dr. Merrill has at least one daughter in drill team, right? And how many do we have at Bryan High School? So we've had middle school directors, and they've been growing and trying to grow the program. At one time, drill team got to be a very small number at Bryan High, and so now it is growing and expanding, and it's because we have these middle school programs in place.
And I can tell you the Rudder Rangerettes is growing also.
Yes, I was talking to the Davila Middle School drill team instructor, who's also one of your Build Ambassador adults. She is wonderful. I can't think of her name, or I'd spread it, but, and she takes on so many things. She's one of those people that just never says no, and a principal can always depend on her, but she leaves the middle school and then goes up and helps at Rudder. So she's that liaison and that bridge from those kids from Davila at Rudder, and she says, I mean, I had no idea we were doing this tonight, but we were talking the other day, and she said that the Rudder group has really expanded exactly what you're saying, because those middle school drill team instructors are going up and helping at the high school.
The
And
SFA,
that's how you build a program.
the SFA director goes to the Bryan High School as well.
Right. That's the same thing in athletics. You bridge that gap with those coaches from the younger ones to the older ones, and so, well-deserved.
I think athletics, that's a little bit different. My take on it is when it's the athletics and they're middle school and they're playing football, when they get to high school, whether they hit the playing field or not, they're going to be allowed to suit up, boot up, and be there. The drill team, we don't see that with them. They have them, and I know which teacher you're talking about. I've had that conversation with her before. How can you have them at the middle school and they qualify and they're there, but when we get to the high school, we lose them? Where's that in between? And that stipend is supposed to be getting them ready. So either they're not ready at the middle school, or it's the high school is not working with the middle school to be able to accept them.
But I
So when
think
you
we're
look at the
seeing that
games,
shift.
There's so many on the other teams coming. They got 60 or 70. We got 17,000 kids, and we got 15 kids or 25 kids in the drill team. We got 8 on the field, and the rest of them on the sideline. And I just think there's some kind of a disconnect. We need to work better with them, or they need to work a little bit more closely with the high school to make sure that the requirements are met for those young girls, that they start there, that they continue on when they
So-
get to the high school.
So Felicia, are you talking about the thing that there are 56 students on the drill team, but they may not all make the dance for the football game, and therefore we will see the same 16 girls on the field every Friday night, and then we'll see the others sitting in the stands because they did not make the dance that evening? Is that what you're talking about? Because we've talked about that before, and we've
Yes,
talked
ma'am.
about how we understand how competitive drill team works, but we would be interested as a board to see the drill team perform as a team and not just as an elite dance team. But I don't think that's what this is for. So I want to get us back to
Middle
this.
school, my
this is middle
understanding
school
is
to
preparing girls or guys to be in the high school drill teams. And
Right.
a lot of our students don't come with a lot of dance background. I mean, they don't come with a lot of volleyball or basketball background either. So at the middle school is our opportunity to train those people up for those high school programs. And so we have not had middle school dance for a very long time, and it's been recent that we've done it. And we're now seeing with 50-something girls at Bryan High School, this benefit of having a middle school program in place. We're starting to grow it.
So I think one of the things is the stipend is for the work after school.
Yes.
So typically, they're a teacher and they're teaching a PE class, and so they're paid accordingly for that. This is, the $1,500 is for the work that they're going to do after. And for example, my daughter's on the Cheyenne, she's a sophomore. I went to a competition, and both Davla and SFA had their groups of girls there, and some boys, honestly, in all of it. And it was remarkable to watch the product, if you would, from where we started a couple years ago to what you saw out on the, it was a basketball court, but what you saw on the basketball court in their performance. And so in addition to that, they have an after school, they've actually got a colonel, they've got leaders and captains and those kind of things that they're working on to establish for the after school version. So it's really giving opportunities to kids where they don't have the opportunities to maybe get out to a private studio or to get to something outside of the school day. And so by giving them this, then they're able to either stay after school, perform at a basketball game, perform at a football game for the middle school, or even enter competitions. And like I said, I don't know that we've ever had a larger drill team at Bryan High. And the Rudder one has grown. It's not where it needs to be size-wise. The girls, the instructors are phenomenal, and I know they're trying to grow that program. Part of it comes from having a stipend like this where you can do what Ms. Benford said, is have high expectations for the kids and give them additional opportunities outside of the school day, and that's where that $1,500 comes in.
And the teacher at Davila that you're mentioning is Michelle Dorsey,
Yes.
and she's incredible. She's showing up at all these same events. She's at Stuff the Bus, she's at, the before school, after school, doing everything she can to funnel those kids from the middle school into the high school.
So then my next question would be the discrepancy between the theater arts director stipend and the drill team. And I mean, there's $1,000 difference there between a theater arts director and a drill team director, and I'm not sure why.
Well, I think we worked with Pat Corbett, and that was,
Well, and let me draw your attention to, that's an intermediate, so it's just grade 5, 6. They're not
Yes.
competing for UIL or anything.
It's
Versus
new.
middle school is.
These are new stipends,
so
basically,
there's
we're
a middle
growing
school stipend
positions.
that exists.
That we already do.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
These are just brand new that were at zero last
Yeah,
year.
we weren't paying anything to our intermediate theater arts, and we know to build the middle school, high school, we need to tap them at that level in grade
Okay.
5, 6.
It just wasn't sitting on this screen together.
Right.
Just a substantial.
Because they're all
difference.
under the fine arts category.
Yeah. Okay, I'm comfortable with that. Thank you.
I want to get back to Ms. Benford's observation, and I think whether it's the drill team numbers aren't there or they're in the stands, if we're going to put a stipend here and emphasis, I think one of the things that would be our expectation is that those high school directors would work with the middle school directors so that they're not in the stands when they get to high school, right? So that they are
Sure.
a strong
Absolutely.
participating part of the team, and that there's, it doesn't become an exclusionary thing that you didn't go to a dance academy somewhere prior to coming in. I mean, I think that's part of what Ms. Benford was getting at. In that they'll continue, that passion will continue to grow and that light will be there, because I think one thing we've talked about as a board in the past that feeds directly into this is, having strong teams and groups come out of middle school, whether it's in athletics, fine arts, or in drill team, and then just somewhere around their sophomore year, sharp drop.
True.
Where they just disappear. And I'm not saying that's on the middle school
Right.
teacher, but somewhere there seems to be a disconnect in some of the fine arts programs that are there. So, encouraged by the increase in numbers. But I think it'll be important for that fine arts department to really work in lockstep and make sure that middle school, they're developing the same way that high school coaches look back to their middle school coaches and say, we're going to put in this program over time. Everybody needs to be on the same page if we're going to formalize it. So.
Are there more?
There's one more page.
Okay.
Athletic stipends. We actually have, water polo has now become a UIL sport. And we've had water polo as a club sport at Bryan High in the past, but now it is a UIL sport for boys and a team for girls, and so we're asking for a head coaching stipend for water polo.
We're in a tough district for that.
We
With
are.
Round Rock and that group up there.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we are. So when you add all these things up, it's $1 million that I'm talking about, $1 million to, no, I'm sorry, not $1 million, 100,000 to.
Okay. Mr.
That's a
Esau
lot.
getting very nervous.
Kevin's all over there sweating. Poor Kevin. We're sorry, Kevin. You got him?
We're going to have to balance that budget again, Kevin.
So it's $100,000 for these stipends that we're asking for tonight.
I move approval of the 2022-2023 employee stipend list as presented.
Second.
I have a motion by Dr. Harland, a second by Mrs. Waller. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
And I want to say that the mentoring stipends will be paid with ESSER funds, so it's not necessarily that much money hitting our budget. So, there we go.
That's good, though. That's
Did you hear that, Kevin? Kevin, did you write that down?
Yeah.
Okay.
The board will now convene in closed session to discuss the following items as allowed by Texas Government Code Chapter 551.074, .071, .129, and .0821. No voting will take place in the closed meeting. Any action the board wishes to take as a result of discussion in closed session will take place after the board reconvenes in the open meeting. It is now 8:07. board reconvened in open session at 9:40. No action was taken in closed session, and if there's no further business nor discussion, we are adjourned.
Thank you.